All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Convo Couch. We are here today with Jason Call. Jason is running for Congress in Washington's 2nd District. Hey, Jason, welcome in.
I appreciate you guys being up here and coming to my home. Welcome to my home. Thank you very much.
You have an awesome home, by the way. It's really cool. I really like the books and the bar. It's nice.
Books and bar, that's my life.
Can't say I disagree with that. So last time I had talked to you previously, we had gone over the usual interview questions. It was before Bernie Sanders dropped out. It was before this pandemic. A lot has changed, to say the least. So right now, given the situation we're in, what is the number one issue in your district that you would focus on day one?
Well, my campaign has put Medicare for All and the Green New Deal as the top two issues. And certainly with the coronavirus, I don't think anything has really changed with that. I think healthcare has been elevated, but those still remain my two top issues. I think the coronavirus has shown the inadequacies of our healthcare system, like right in front of our face. Here's where we have been failing. But also, there's other kinds of preparedness that we need to really consider now. I don't know how much our government had really looked into pandemic preparedness, but it seems like the ball got dropped all over the place with that. And now it's right in front of worst pandemic in a century. I think we've really got to do better at being prepared for something like this in the future.
And I'm sure you've seen the protest for Black Lives led against also police brutality. We've seen lots of people be even killed in that span of time. Elijah McClain being one of them, George Floyd, who ignited these protests. What is your opinion on that movement and what it's doing right now to the American people, how it's activating them to be aware of these issues?
Well, I'm in full support, and I have been down to the autonomous zone, now the occupied area. I was there the night before. I've been there a couple of times, but I was there the night before it became the autonomous zone, and I was right up against the barriers. I was 15 feet away from the police. I was in part of the group with Shama Sawant that we hopped over the barriers and we pushed ourselves closer to the police. And that's the kind of activism that I have been involved in since I was 19 years old when we were protesting Desert Storm and the invasion of Iraq then. And so I'm in full support of active in the street protest movements. And I think we don't get the change that we need unless we're willing to get in the streets. And so, I was with the Socialist Alternative and Black Lives Matter when we marched on City Hall and we occupied City Hall and demanded the resignation of Jenny Durkin. I think I would like to see that movement grow. I think we need really what we're doing, and I say we as in I'm 40 miles north of it, and I'm somewhat separated, and I can only get down there only so often. But we've had protests in little cities and towns all over this district and all over the state and really all over the country, and I think it's fantastic, and I think it brings awareness to people who may think that everything's okay in this country. Well, clearly it's not okay, and we have seen so often now how the police are, even when they're on camera, they're willing to abuse protesters, they're willing to use weapons of war, people are being tear gassed, people are having rubber bullets fired on them, which is, no small thing. I mean, those things can do some serious damage and even kill, but I support the protests, and I will be down there when I'm able to, but full support.
You mentioned Shama Sawant as one of the leaders, in contrast to Jenny Durkin, who people are demanding her resignation now, who is responsible for also putting the order to disassemble what was Chaz's shop. How do we get people focused on the economics and on other issues? Because police brutality is just one arm of the oligarchy. So I've seen little pockets of people start to talk about capitalism and the destruction of capitalism. And I've seen pockets of people start pointing to the economic issues in the Black community as well that they're directly affected from and where our money goes. So do you believe in defunding the police? And how do we get the economics part of this in there as well?
Well, I think one of the things that I have done, on my personal campaign Facebook page, and I think I posted some of this on Twitter, is we really have to look at the amount of money that is spent. Here in just my county, Snohomish County, we have, I think, 12 different cities that have municipalities that have their own police forces, and that's aside from the county. My research team just brought up the funding, and we had $343 million spent on police forces. That includes millions of dollars to acquire military hardware. And I think one of the things that we've got to do is we have to put those numbers in front of people and say, this is how much we are spending on the police. Now, where would you rather your resources are going? And the other thing is we have to take a critical look at whether the police are effective in the jobs that they are tasked to do. I don't think anybody is saying that there are some issues that we might need some armed response, some police force, if you want to call it that, to be the primary handlers of, criminal cases, maybe detective work, but even that might not be necessary. But certainly things like responding to collisions, responding to, mental health issues. Those are things that we do not need armed responders to be handling. And you look at the variety of things that the current police force is tasked for, and I think that better social services or better other specialists who are not armed to be responding to those things is really what we want. I think when we talk about police abolition, we're talking about it in its current form. We need better screening. We need better training for anybody who is going to hold a gun and have a badge. And then there are so many things that we simply do not need armed people responding to. So one of the things that I'm proud to have signed on to and endorse is 10 Demands for Justice. And if people haven't looked at that, if you go to 10forjustice.com, you'll see the demands. And it includes such a wide range of policy reforms, and it does tackle things like what our drug laws are or should be, things like reparations, things like prosecutorial immunity, things like qualified immunity. There's a wide range of things that we need to tackle. So I encourage people to look at 10forjustice.com, and that's the variety of policies that I would support and try to get implemented at the federal level.
So also, last time we spoke, that was before Bernie Sanders dropped out. We had a lot of enthusiasm and optimism as to how far he would get this time around. And then, so many things went wrong, including, of course, the establishment coming together against him, and also corruption within his own campaign, and also the election issues that we had yet again. How does this make you feel now about the Democratic Party and progressives' role within the Democratic Party? Isn't our power mainly right now outside the electorate in the streets? Is it worth Dem entering at this point? There's a lot of apathy right now. There's a lot of people that just feel lost.
I've always felt that Dem exit and Dem enter are both important. I mean, people who can't stomach being inside the Democratic Party, please continue to work outside the party. I think we have to do everything we can to pull the party to the left, whether it's successful or not. I mean, I have been working with the Bernie Sanders, volunteer movement coalitions here in Washington State within the Democratic Party as an elected member of the Washington State Democrats Central Committee to try and pull the party to the left. And obviously we're getting tons of resistance. The establishment is basically an arm of the DNC. They don't like me. I don't like them. How long I can hang with the Democratic Party at this point remains to be seen, but I am running as a Democrat. I don't think anybody running outside the party for a congressional seat is going to be successful right now. So I am running as a Democrat, and I will work hard to pull the Democratic Party to the left for as long as I can. And at the point where I say I can't do this anymore, then I won't. I mean, I think that's a personal decision for everybody. But I do think the inside and outside of the movement is important. I think we've got to keep trying both angles.
Okay, and just when you get into Congress, though, when a lot of, like, for instance, the squad members are forced to play ball, they call Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear. They go, they play the game a little bit because also she's in charge of appointing them to certain committees, and they are in some important committees already. There's not a lot of progressives in there. How do you avoid falling into that trap of sort of trying to keep your position and get reelected, but also listen to your constituents who are primarily far to the left of the Democratic establishment? How do you work that game? Because it just seems so difficult when we get people in there and they're not really fully opposing people like Nancy Pelosi, who is a gatekeeper to a lot of the progressive things we want.
Well, I'm fully behind replacing Pelosi and a number of other leadership Democrats. Unfortunately, Michaela Wilkes didn't make it past the post against Steny Hoyer, but I think we've got to keep trying. And when I get elected, you talked about the whole Mama Bear thing, and that. It kind of turns my stomach a little bit to hear things like that, because I am not somebody who likes to play ball. In fact, I'm known as somebody who doesn't like to play ball. I think when it comes to certain aspects of legislation, you don't want to be the voice that prevents harm reduction. I mean, I think that's one of the things when you get into Congress, and when you're faced with everything that you're faced, you want to do as little harm as possible. So, maybe I have to vote for something because I don't want to be the deciding vote on whether something gets passed. But if something is I'm really opposed to it, and my vote one way or the other is not going to make a difference, I'm going to be on the opposite side of that, and I'm going to be yelling about why we didn't get the legislation that we needed. And it's, if you go to my website, callforcongress.com, and you go to a page called Rick's Receipts. Basically, we have exposed all of the money he takes from the fossil fuel industry, from the healthcare industry, from the Wall Street and the banking industry, from the war machine, and votes that go along with it. And I think that's what people really need to understand. So I intend to be that congressperson that comes back to my district, explains every vote that I make, why I made that vote, why that we're not getting the things that we need out of Congress. And the reality is it all comes down to the money, the corporate money that is in Congress. We've got to stop the corporate money. It's why I don't take any corporate PAC money, and all the progressives that are running across the country are in the same boat. We're not taking corporate PAC money because that is the root of the evil, So I think we just have to keep hammering that message to our constituents. We do not get the service, we do not get what we need out of Congress because corporations are opposing the people's needs. And I think that message has to be consistent. And that is one thing that I do think AOC has been consistent on. She has said there's too much money in Congress, too much corporate money in Congress, and that's why we're not getting what we're getting. Okay.
I know foreign policy is an important issue to you. We asked you about foreign policy when we interviewed you last, and your opponent takes a lot of money from the defense industry. What is your opinion right now on the $740 billion budget that was just approved by both Republicans and Democrats? And also, what is your opinion on the Russian and China conflict that both parties are also pushing us to get into? They're pushing a new Cold War.
I have not. I'm just going to say the Russia-China thing, I have not done a whole lot of reading up on, and so I can't comment, with any kind of knowledge basis on that. But as far as, my background, I have been an anti-war protester my entire adult life. We spend far too much money on the military. We need to cut. As a start, we need to cut our military budget in half. We need to, there's a ton of wasteful spending, aside from the fact that we are building bullets and bombs and weapons of war, and all that money is going to weapons manufacturers and the war machine, the military-industrial complex. But beyond that, there's just a lot of waste in the military. So we need to cut the military budget. We need to pay our soldiers more. I think there's a legitimate reason to have a military, but what we see with our budgeting is not the military, it's militarism, and there's a big difference between the two. And so I will oppose policies of militarism always.
What is the difference between the military and militarism?
Well, I think it's every country's sort of natural nation state right to have a defense force. So if you were defending your own borders, I think, to have a military, as many countries do, to have a military that is a defense force for actual aggressors, that's one thing. But what we have is military adventurism. We have been using our military, and not just recently, it's been going on for 70 years and more. But just thinking about post-Cold War, we have used our military and the CIA to go into other countries to, stage coups. We're seeing it, in places. I mean, it's always for America been Central and South America that have been targets. But even other places around the world where our military is there to protect resources. I mean, we wouldn't be in Afghanistan or Iraq at all if there weren't natural resources that we were trying to make sure that we were strategically in control of, as opposed to, the people who are in the country, like Iraqis controlling their own oil. And so we are continuing to play that sort of triangulation between superpowers with our military, and I think we need to stop doing that. And then I'll also say we need to stop sending Israel the money that we are sending Israel until they can fully commit to protecting and preserving Palestinian rights.
How do we get people to vote right now more than ever? There's so much apathy because we're seeing Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and now maybe Kanye West be running for the presidency. It just seems like a joke now. People's votes aren't counting, too. We've seen what happened with McGrath and Booker. We've seen what happened with Bernie Sanders. How do we make election integrity an issue that's important? Because a lot of people tune it out. How do we get that to be an issue? Because it seems like to me, if we want a Green New Deal, Medicare for all these things, we're really not going to have as great of a chance of getting it if we don't have fair and free elections.
You're absolutely right. I've been an election integrity advocate my entire life. In fact, if I look right here, did George W. Bush steal America's 2004 elections? There's a full expose on how Bush stole the 2004 election, primarily with electronic voting machines in Ohio, where Kenneth Blackwell was Secretary of State there, and also his campaign manager. So there's a lot of corruption in elections, and now that's the right wing always wants to say that there's voter fraud, but there isn't voter fraud. Election fraud and voter fraud are completely different things. So we do have the sort of the puppet masters controlling elections. I think the first thing we have to do is we have to get rid of electronic voting machines completely. They've been used to steal elections for 25 years. And I think we have to go through to a mail-in system. And it's not that there aren't problems with mail-in ballots, because you still have, a chain of custody issue. But I think it reduces the potential for election tampering, and it also provides the most accessibility for people who can't make it to the polls. So, what we see with people waiting for 8-10 hours in polling lines, and we have a lot of it the Republican Party, but I'm not going to give the Democratic Party a pass on this, on voter suppression. But, certainly the Republican Party wants to suppress the minority vote, and when they are in control of their state governments, then they are able to do that. So I think we need to have federal laws that mandate that all states do mail-in voting, and that's a place to start.
And where can people find you, and also remind us when your elections are for your primary?
Okay. So our primary is August 4th. That is 1 month from yesterday. We are an all mail-in ballot state here in Washington. So make sure your ballots are mailed in or get to the drop box by August 4th. And callforcongress.com, that's FOR, not the number 4. Callforcongress.com is my website, but you also catch me on Facebook and Twitter at callforcongress.com. I approach my campaign a little bit differently on Twitter than Facebook. They're a little bit of a different animal, but I do a lot of policy writing stuff on Facebook where I respond to things in the moment on Twitter, as a lot of people do. But people will get a very good picture of where I'm coming from. You can see my endorsements. You can see my media spots. In fact, when we're done with this, I'll go ahead and link our interview here to my media page on my website. And, donate, volunteer. And, I think we have an excellent shot of being on the general election. So Washington is a top 2 primary, which means 2 Democrats could be on the ballot together. That is our goal. Our goal is to be on the ballot next to the incumbent. There are 6 Republicans. I just did a League of Women Voters forum with 3 of them the other night. They're all way out there from where I'm coming from. And I'm happy to let those 6 fight it out for the 30 or 35% of the Republican vote in this district. And I do believe we will be on the general election ballot for November. Very excited about it.
Thank you very much, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Very good to have you here.